Good morning, friends. This morning I wanted to talk to you about miracles. Have you ever experienced a miracle? Well, recently I've experienced two. It wasn't what I was hoping for, but God pulled it out in an amazing way. So I just wanted to share that with all of you. And so here it goes. About 3 days after Christmas, I got a call from my adopted dad, Joe, and he was calling for help, which, he doesn't usually do. So I'm like, what's going on? He said that he had fallen and that he was having a hard time feeling his right side. And all he wanted me to do was just go to the drugstore and get him some crutches. And then if I could stop by the grocery store and get him some fruit, that would be great. And he would pay me back. Um, no. So I was like, Dad, did you go to the doctor? What's going on? It sounds like a stroke. And he's like, oh, no, I'll call later, maybe next week, whatever. And I'm like, no. So I called the local hospital where he goes, and they're like, "Oh no, that definitely sounds like a stroke. Bring him in." And I'm like, "Okay." So I called him back, and I was just like, "Nope, we're going to the hospital." And he's just like, "Okay," so I get there, and it's actually worse than I had thought. And his wife and I could barely carry him, so there was no way I was going to get him to my car and to the hospital. So called an ambulance. They were amazing and knew exactly what to do and got him straight to Sanford of Bemidji. And they did confirm, yeah, it's a stroke. And so they wanted to get more imaging though, just to make sure what kind of stroke it was and everything. And like I said, his whole right side, he could not lift it. He could feel it, but it was like super heavy. He said it felt like it was 400 pounds and he just couldn't lift it. So by the time they got him back from getting the CTs and MRIs and all of that, it was about a half an hour. And he was already lifting his right arm and right leg. And the doctor came in and he was just amazed. And he was just like, this is a bona fide act of God. This is a miracle, which you don't usually hear doctors talking like that. So that was super cool. But then he called in his resident and was like, dude, you got to check this guy out. Like, he should not be moving like this. And, he was amazed. And then they both called in the nurse that had been attending my dad. And there's like, you got to come see this guy. You won't ever see this again. This is amazing. This is a true miracle. Like, he should not be moving like this with the type of stroke that he had had. So that's miracle number one, that he was even doing that. And part of that miracle too was in that scan, it showed that his left carotid artery was also clogged or clogging, and that it needed to have a stent put in it. So had he not had that first stroke and we got him to the hospital, we would have never had the scans to show that he was going to have another stroke. So God is good. And after that, we're getting to our second miracle. So let me just hang with me here a little bit longer. Um, they ended up transferring him to Fargo to be able to do the stint. And they are not sure exactly when it happened, if it was before or after putting the stent in. But he had another series of mini strokes. And that caused what they call aspiration pneumonia. So something that should have gone into his stomach, the muscles weren't working right, and it actually went into his lungs, causing that aspiration. And it was severe enough to where they needed to put a ventilator on so he could breathe. And once you're intubated, that's going to help you breathe and get better. And so he was getting to a point where he could breathe pretty much on his own. So they started testing whether or not they could take him off the ventilator. And every time they would turn that oxygen down, he would fail like within like 5 minutes, and he would start having difficulty breathing. And so we are just praying, like, God, what do we do here? He has declined so fast and we're scared, and it's just crazy fast. But I just kept praying, and every time I felt like God just kept saying to me that you need to get that ventilator off of him. You need to get him off that breathing machine. And everybody that I talked to and prayed with in my little circle of prayer warriors, they're like, yeah, that breathing tube's got to come out. And so I talked with his wife, because the doctors want to know worst case scenario, what do they do? My dad did have a DNR in place, so we had to really think about what his wishes were in this. And we just said, you know what, if it goes bad and he's not doing well, we're going to respect his wishes for the DNR. We're not going to do any kind of, breathing tube in his neck or feeding tubes or any of that. We're just going to be at peace and say goodbye. And that was incredibly difficult. And so his wife was with him in Fargo. I'm at work, and I get the call. I think it was a Wednesday. And they said, we're going to take this ventilator out, but the tests have not gone well. So you should probably get here and say goodbye before we pull this tube out. That was not a call I expected. I was completely blown away by that, and just in tears. Like I had nothing. And so I'm like calling everybody to pray, and I'm letting everybody know it's, that, where he's at and what's going on. And so I get there, and they talk to us, and they're like, okay, we're going to do this. And so we've prayed with him, and we've listened to worship music with him, and we just let him know that, Dad, if you need to let go, it's okay. And so they took the ventilator out at 10 after 2. And, like I said, before he hadn't lasted 5 minutes, and, 5 minutes came, and he's still doing great, breathing on his own. And then 20 minutes, and then an hour, and then 2 hours. And then, it's like 3.5 hours, and he's still doing just fantastic. They did put a little oxygen tube in his nose to help, but he was really doing good at this point. And so we stayed overnight at a hotel close by, just in case, waiting for a phone call, so we didn't get any sleep because we're just waiting for the doctors to call to say, you know what, he didn't make it. But thank God, the next morning we get there was no phone calls. We get there, and he's actually sitting up, he's awake, he's alert, and he's trying to talk, and he's talking some. And it's just like, oh my gosh, God, what did you just do? We're here ready to say goodbye, and here he is, completely recovered. And it's all because you showed us that breathing tube needed to come out. And so you guys, just, if you know that you hear God say something to you, trust it, listen to him, and do what he's asking you to do, because he's wanting to do a work and to show who he is, and just the amazing miracles that he performs, and so that's miracle number 2, that, they expected him to die and to pass on, and God showed himself mighty, and he did a complete 180, and and he is breathing on his own completely, no breathing tubes, no oxygen in the nose, nothing, totally breathing on his own. So, now he is able to eat soft pureed foods. He's able to communicate a little bit, talk some, and he hasn't quite regained movement yet, but he is out of ICU. He's on a regular hospital floor unit. He's got amazing godly nurses that are attending to him, and, a ton of people praying for him. And he's working with speech therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy. So they are getting him on the road to recovery. And it is all because of how amazing God is. All of our prayers, trusting in him, and just God doing what he does and pulling out a miracle, you guys. And I just want to shout out and share that with everybody, that never stop believing. It doesn't always turn out the way that we hope it to, but when we do experience a miracle, we should be sharing that with everybody to help encourage their faith. So that's what I'm doing. I hope you guys were encouraged and inspired, and full of hope through this testimony, and that you won't quit believing for your miracles. And if you've got a miracle you want to share, go ahead and give a comment below, and I would love to hear about it. Thank you guys for listening to a very long testimony, and I just pray God's blessing on you, and have a great week. Bye.